In this video, I'm going to be building and going over kind of the thought process behind this very special mining rig. On April 12th, 2024, a lot of people in the mining space know that date. It's a very significant date in that, unfortunately, it was the day that we lost Ovalbore Tech, Eric Berger, as a lot of his close friends knew him. And he was personally one of my really close friends, and I actually had a conversation with him about 2 hours before his passing, and we were talking about building a special mining rig. So if you guys aren't aware, around that time frame was when a lot of people were starting to make a shift from HiveOS to MMPOS. This was around the time that HiveOS was increasing the mining fees. And one of the things that we talked about was how cool would it be to build a spec mining rig that didn't cost you anything to run from a software perspective. And what I mean by this is, if you already have an existing mining setup, what if we identified some cards that we could run that were free to run on MMPOS? Because unlike HiveOS, MMPOS does not charge you if your graphics cards have less than 4 gigabytes of VRAM. So we started talking about, okay, well, how cool would it be to have a P106 3 gig rig? And then just have it spec mining coins, right? It really is the cheapest barrier to entry, and there's no ongoing cost outside of your power costs. You don't have to worry about, any type of mining operating system fees, anything like that. Unfortunately, a couple hours after that, he passed away, and we were talking about building this rig. And so coming out of that conversation, I wanted to build this rig. And as soon as he passed away, I knew I had to build it. And so I sought out the best of the best 3 gigabyte cards. P106 was obviously up there with the list, but I was also looking, was there anything that had GDDR6 in it? And so, kind of looking around, seeing what was out there, seeing if there was anything that was maybe a little bit better than the P106s. If you're not familiar, those are basically a GTX 1060 3 gig. And so those came out around the 2017 time frame, kind of older tech. Well, when the AMD RX lineup, the Radeons, the 5000 series were out, they actually made a kind of a one-off variant for Dell to put in their Alienware PCs. And that's what I have here. So I've acquired 8 of these. And if you're unfamiliar with these are an RX 5300. So these were only put in one model of the Alienware desktop towers. So they're very difficult to get. There's not a lot on the secondhand market. In fact, I spent the past year just accumulating these 8. They're not super expensive when you find them. It's just more of, they're scarce, because the only way to get them is if somebody pulled it out of that OEM Alienware and replaced it with an upgraded graphics card. Or, if they were parting out their Alienware, anything like that. So what these are, is you can see there's a 6-pin connector here. Single fan. Again, these were Dell OEMs. And we've got 2 display ports and 1 HDMI port. And these are, for all intents and purposes, a 3 gigabyte VRAM version of the RX 5500. What that means is we've got better efficiency than what the P106s would have. And we've got potentially a really good kapow card from an efficiency standpoint. Not going to be as great as the 6000 series, but they're still really up there. If you're in mining, the 5700s are still kapow monsters. And so these are basically, a really trimmed down version of that. So on kapow, these should be getting around 11 mega hash a card. We'll see what the wattage is. What I'm expecting when I'm done building this, we're looking at under 700 watts at the wall. So we're looking like that 600 to 700 watt range, which should be pretty good for a 8 card spec mining rig. And so I wanted to build this rig in dedication to Ovalbore. And in fact, this rig will be purely for spec mining. This is going to be my spec mining coin. And I'm going to work on getting some feedback from the community periodically on what we should spec mine. We're going to spec mine, we're going to hold, and at some point we will liquidate. But this isn't going to be something that we're going to be necessarily mining for profit or anything like that. We're basically going to let our community here determine what coins that we mine. So going over the hardware, we do have 8 of those, and I did get all of these on eBay. They were pretty, like I said, they pop up, they don't pop up a lot. You do get some sellers that are trying to ask like a couple $100s for these cards, but all of these cards, a few of these actually got on auction, and I think one of them was like $40, but they essentially range from $40 up to $90 per card, just based on the timing. As they popped up over the past year, I acquired them. We also have, if you guys didn't see that video, I actually won a H110 BTC Plus from Altered Component, and this is what we're going to be using in the rig today. So when I originally did that video, I talked about maybe doing like a 13 card build on this, and as I was stepping back and looking, you know, already knowing I was going to build that rig for Ovalbore, I said, you know what, this is perfect. You know, it's a mining motherboard that came from another mining community member. And so I said, you know what, we're going to kind of change things up. So originally I was going to run a much bigger setup. In fact, this was the unit I was going to run. This is basically a stackable mining rig frame. But I decided that H110 fits perfectly in a smaller enclosure. We've got 8 cards. This is going to be perfect. So my original plan was to put everybody's sticker on this enclosure, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move the stickers onto this case. So we're going to be using a little bit of a smaller case, but it's mainly because it already fits the H110, and we're only going to be running one power supply, which is going to be an EVA 1000 watt. We've got that. We're going to be running, as I mentioned, we've got the H110 Pro BTC Plus. We've got our 8 graphics cards. We're going to be running these risers. So these are actually off of Amazon. I've been running these for years. These are the version 006C. I actually like these a lot, especially paired with this motherboard, because whenever you put them on a frame like this, if you have a single slot GPU, you notice these aren't very wide. So when you have a single slot GPU, you can actually bump these up next to each other and line up, you know, like 12 on this frame itself. With these risers, we could line up 12 GPUs if we want. When you use something a little bit wider, the riser probably necessarily doesn't matter, but you can see kind of how slim that is there. And so I'm sticking with these just in the event, you know, in the future, maybe we decide to swap out GPUs on this rig for something else. We already have those risers intact. I've been running this specific riser since 2017. Never had a failure. So we're going to be going with those. And because we've got the H110, we're going to be running individual X1 connectors for all of these. We're only going to be running 8 GPUs. So on this, we're going to fill all the black slots first, and then we're going to fill the white spots from this end back, is our plan with that. We've got, so we've got the USB cables for that. And as I mentioned, we've got the power supply. We've got this mining frame. So this is technically a 6 GPU mining frame, is how they market these, for it to have, you know, adequate spacing. However, with these smaller GPUs, we can actually run 8 on here. And if you had single slots, you could actually run 12 up here and potentially plug a 12th one in down below if they're all low profile cards. So it's definitely a unique mining case. I really like these. And so as I mentioned, we're going to basically be assembling this today. And everybody's stickers, we're probably going to put on the bottom here because I'm actually going to be stacking this vertical instead of horizontal flat. And then because we're only running one PSU, we are going to have to run a few adapter cables here. So we do have some PCI splitters, and these are going to be perfectly fine because these cards are not going to pull a lot of watts. But we are going to be running some of these, and we also are going to be running a couple of the SATA to 6-pin directly. And I typically don't recommend this. However, we do have on this power supply, we've got a couple dedicated SATA power strips. So we're going to run one on each of the SATA power branches. We're not going to run multiples, but that will give us some of that power distribution to the riser versus all the load on the actual 8-pin cables for the PCIe power lanes. And then in addition to that, we've got 4 Noctua. These are actually IPPC fans. So these are the high power industrial ones, but they are 4-pin PWM. So they won't run super loud, but they will exhaust any heat that is coming out of these when we're mining Capel. We could have went with some cheaper, other ones, but I actually had these. These are the Noctuas that you get with the Osprey E300s. And so we're actually just going to run these on the system. If it gets too loud, we can always swap them out with something a little bit quieter, but I think they're going to be great. And then to power those, or to supply, power to all 4 off of the motherboard, we've got a just a PWM splitter here. So this will plug into the board, power all 4 fans. So that is the plan for this build. I'm going to go ahead and assemble everything, and then we're going to get it powered up. We're going to hop on over to the computer. We're going to try to tweak some cards, make sure everything shows up in MMPOS. The other thing I wanted to mention, we are running, I believe I've got, I got 16 gigs in here. So we've got 2 8-gig sticks. This board only has 2 slots, so we do have both of those filled. We've got our NVMe in here. This has 1 NVMe slot, or 1 M.2 slot. And so what's cool about this is we can actually run a storage provider on this. I'm going to leave the CPU as is. However, in the future, I may upgrade this to an i7-7700K, and I may upgrade the NVMe to maybe like a 2 terabyte, and we could turn this into like a tri-miner, which would allow us to mine with the GPUs, mine with the CPU a little bit, and also provide decentralized storage on the storage network. But for today's video, we're just going to build it as a GPU mining rig. I believe this has a Celeron, like a 2-core, 2-thread, or 2-core, 4-thread in it. And then we've got 256 gig NVMe here. I already have MMPOS flashed on this, so we're good to go. And we are going to be running this on Wi-Fi. So we've got a TP-Link. I believe this is the T2U Archer, if I'm not mistaken. These are typically the Wi-Fi cards I run. These work great with MMPOS. So let's go ahead and get this assembled, and then take a look at final product, and then jump on over to the computer and check it out in MMPOS. We've got the rig all assembled. So we've got our 8 RX 5300 cards. We've got our cable management kind of tidied up in the back. So we're all good there. And wouldn't be an Ovalbore dedication rig without the glow-in-the-dark Ovalbore 120 millimeter fan grills. So if we actually turn those off, you can see they do glow in the dark with Ovalbore's logo. So we've got that all in place. The last thing we need to do is just plug in the Wi-Fi adapter. Now, I did decide to make a little bit of a change, and instead of running the Archer T3 that I was going to run, I'm actually going to run the Archer T2 Nano. So this is a little micro USB Wi-Fi adapter. So we're just going to slot this right in, an open USB port, and we should be good to go. So we're going to go ahead and let's get this turned on and see what the fan noise is like. There we can hear those IPPC fans spinning up. But they should settle in here in a minute. And that's kind of our idle noise. So not too bad. It sounds, maybe a little bit like a small space heater with a fan on it. So overall, not too bad on that noise level. And obviously we could always unplug these fans, or we can adjust the PWM in the BIOS, the fan curve. but happy with that. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to hop on over to the computer, MMPOS and the power meter, and we're going to tune this for kapow and see what our power draw is. Back over at the computer, and before we take a look at MMPOS, I just wanted to hop on over to Tech Power Up, kind of show you the specs of the RX 5300. So as you can see, it is a Navi 14, and we've got 3 gigabytes of VRAM. It is GDDR6. We've got a 96-bit bandwidth on the memory side, and then we've got 1408 cores, 88 TMUs, 32 ROPs. And you can see it did come out in 2020. It is part of the original Navi line. And just scrolling down, you can see it does have a TDP of 100. We won't be hitting anywhere near that. And you'll see here in a minute how low we were actually able to get the power. And so this just kind of gives you a quick glance of what the GPU is. And if we hop on to the generation, you can see that is here. So this, as I mentioned, was only built for those Alienware. I think it was a R5, maybe. But essentially, it was interesting because they actually said it had a launch price of $129, but this was never sold retail. So just some unique info there for you guys. And so now if we, you can even see here, 3 gigs with the Radeon RX 5300 OEM, and it is flagged as an OEM because it wasn't sold retail. So if we hop on over to MMPOS, and let's just give this a refresh real quick. So we are achieving around 88 mega hash. And the clocks that I ended up settling in on are 1400 on the core, 955 on the MEM. Our voltage, we have a 835. And the reason we run 835 in MMPOS, you'll see if we run 835, we can achieve around that 818 to 820 range. With MMPOS, you do have to set it a little bit higher to achieve, because it doesn't fully achieve this amount. So if you're trying to get 820, 825, you got to do 835 to 840. And then our memory voltage is 1280, and our memory controller voltage is 750. And we're leaving the power limit as is. On a software side, you can see we are kind of hovering around that 55 to 60 watt mark. And if we bring over my power meter, and so this is the actual power at the wall, we're getting 662 watts at the wall. If we hop on over to what to mine, and let's go ahead and adjust this, you'll see the power will fluctuate a little bit. It'll go between 650 and 665 or so. But let's just put it at the upper end here. You can see right now it's sitting at 666, so let's just go with that. And check profitability. And if we scroll down, we can see Raven Coins actually is profitable at my power price. However, reminder, this is a 3 gigabyte card, which means we can't mine Raven Coin. We can't mine Fish Hash with it either, as we don't have 6 gigabytes of VRAM. So you can see everything else is kind of negative on it. But you can get a feel for, how much in the negative it would be. But for me, what I'm mining is actually Nor AI. I do run a Nor AI pool. Unfortunately, I haven't had the best luck lately mining Nor AI. You can kind of see what my average effort's going to be. But we're going to put this system on there and see how it does. In fact, you can see it's on there. We just put it on, so it is still ramping up. Let's give this a refresh here. You can see we're getting 88.48 mega hash effective poolside. So that is all working great. And you can see that earlier this month, they actually had a reward reduction. So it went from 5,000 XNA per block down to 4,000. So that's obviously impacting profitability as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to leave this on Nor AI. We might take a look at some of the other Kapow coins and figure out what we want to mine. But for now, at least for the next week or so, we're going to leave this on Miner AI pool, spec mining, mining to a dedicated HODL wallet that we're going to use to kind of track profitability for this specific rig and kind of what those wallets may look like over time. In fact, I may set up a dedicated portfolio in like CoinGecko just around this rig so that we can kind of see how it is tracking over time. And then in the future, I'm probably going to engage with the community maybe every 2 weeks or so, and we'll talk about what coin we think we should mine and hold. And then we might do a live stream where we, tweak the GPUs. I use, some feedback from you guys that we can actually overclock, undervolt the GPUs, put it on that coin, and then we will basically accumulate that coin for that time period. So if you guys have any thoughts on this specific mining rig, any thoughts on the coins you think that we should mine with it, or if you actually have some RX 5300s yourself, definitely drop those in the comments below.